violent scene that played out on Capitol Hill as supporters of President Trump stormed the Capitol buildings, even getting into the Senate chambers. With us now is political scientist, author, and professor David Koyzis. Do Americans know or care how the world is depicting them? You know, a beacon of hope and democracy just crumbling in front of our eyes?
Well, some are and some aren't. I think that's fairly evident. Americans have thought of themselves as being almost the inventors of democracy in some fashion, and it is true that Americans pioneered the extension of the franchise to have a very wide electorate. Up until 1832 in Great Britain, very few males and only property holders had the right to vote, and Americans pushed forward on enfranchising a very large number of people in their electorate, and that's not an insignificant accomplishment given the what was going on in the 19th century, and they were far ahead of everybody else. But right now, I think many Americans are embarrassed by what they're seeing playing out in the Capitol and possibly in the state capitals as well, if what we're hearing is correct. 40 years ago, it seemed to me that the American polity was not nearly as divided as it is now. Yes, there were partisan divisions. Yes, there were disagreements, and they were aired in debates on the floor of Congress. But I think things have gotten quite a bit worse over the last generation, and that's not a happy thing for somebody to watch.
Do you think that played a role in just seeing a lot of disenfranchised groups like white supremacist groups, QAnon, Proud Boys, so forth, really falling in line with Trump and his rhetoric?
Well, I think so. I think that if you have groups of people, if you have a whole segment of the population that feels as though they've lost out on the American way of life, if you will, then they may be vulnerable to the promises of anybody, whether they're reputable or not.
What will it need to turn around?
Well, I'm tempted to say somebody who's capable of reconciling the various groups within the United States, and some presidents do that better than others. I will say that I think the current occupant, the outgoing occupant of the White House, has been very bad at bringing people together outside of his own support base, and that's very difficult.
All right, Professor David Koyzis, thanks so much for joining us today on Context.